Hello, Assalamu alaikum everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound and healthy. And today I'm going to talk about that one thing that people always try to ask and answer, and people still seem to think that, oh no, it's beyond them and they don't understand why this and why that. Yes, we're going to talk about the very easy but at the same time very difficult question of why is it that Islam forbids arranged marriages, but then also forbids us from having relationships with people before marriages? Because after all, if you're supposed to marry somebody you like, then how can you know if that person that you like is somebody who you really want to marry if you do not date that person? Yeah. Well, that is where Islam has actually already given you an answer and made it very clear. But for the sake of argument, let's go through it all again, keeping in mind even the modern relationships, especially the modern relationships. Now, in Islam, yes, it is forbidden to have arranged marriages. You are not allowed to marry your children off to anybody you like. They have to like the person they marry. They have to know the person they marry. They have to even meet that person a few times with all the family present, or with at least 2 to 3 people present, and discuss things very properly, carefully, meticulously about what they expect from their married life and what their viewpoint is on the kind of life that they see for themselves in the future. And that is when they decide if they are supposed to get married or not, or if they agree with each other or not. Yes, so you see, where does dating come in that? Where does relationships come in that? Nowhere. Because actually, when you're dating each other and when you're having relationships, you are creating a false sort of a binding that actually is not even legally binding, if you know what I mean. Let's put it this way. When we create relationships that are not legally binding, there's a reason why we have marriages and why marriages are contracts and why they're legally binding. It is to stop you from going through that unnecessary, unnatural. Yes, it's unnatural. It's unnecessary and unnatural the way you go through these relationships and end up in messy situations. And then when you disentangle yourself from those situations, the psychological wounds that you end up with. And so the risk of mental illness or mental health risks, you can say, it increases. Okay? Now, let's just simply put it this way. For example, okay, you have a boyfriend, or you have a girlfriend, and now you suddenly think that, oh, because you are in a relationship, so it's binding upon both of you. You owe each other, you have duties towards each other, you have rights towards each other, but actually you don't. You see, you don't. Maybe morally you may think you do, but you don't. Legally you don't. Socially, morally, actually you don't. Now, just because you decided that you wanted to, be with each other, but that is just a decision that you people have made, and there is no contract. Okay, you can argue that there is a verbal contract, because after all, good faith and all comes in. Okay, fine, let's even add that in. Okay, but then again, it has no legal standing. Why? Because this relationship has no legal standing. Why? Because this is something which you can get out of without any legal repercussions. When you get married, you sign a contract. You announce to the world that you're married. It is legally binding. The whole world, the law, the government, everybody has to accept your relationship. And so when you want to break that marriage contract, when you want to break that relationship, because that relationship has an official legal standing, when you break up, it will also be an official legal breakup. And then the mess that you have to go through there, the repercussions that you have to go through there, will again be official and legal. And so there's a framework behind it to help both the parties, on their fallback. You understand? But when you are breaking up from a non-marital relationship, from an affair, from a relationship, it's even messier. Because, again, you have no legal standing. That it's not legally binding. But the hurt is still there. The pain is still there. The wounds are still there. You're still psychologically hurt. You're physically hurt. You're morally hurt. You're socially hurt. You've gone through the whole mess that one goes through when one has married and divorced. but you have no legal backing, you have no support system, you have nothing. Because nobody owes you that. The system doesn't owe you that. The world doesn't owe you that. The legal framework doesn't owe you that. The government doesn't owe you that. And your parents definitely don't owe you that. And you don't owe each other. You see, that's the thing. So this is a fantasy relationship built in a fantasy world. Or let's put it this way, this is virtual. The nature of this relationship is literally virtual. It's not real because it doesn't have any real standing. So when you talk about betrayal and cheating and this and that, when you look deep down, again, it's not legally binding, so you can't do anything about it. So if your girlfriend or your boyfriend decides to step out on you, and you can scream blue murder that he's cheating on you, but the truth is, legally, he's not bound. He's not bound to you legally. So actually, practically, you people have no way to exert your rights on each other, because you actually don't have any rights on each other. Accept that, admit that. That is the first step that you need to acknowledge before you go further on. The reason why people enter into such relationships is to avoid the mess of marriage and divorce, but actually you end up in an even messier situation, because again, as I said, in marriage and divorce, because in the eyes of the law and in the eyes of the system, in the eyes of the government, in the eyes of the people, you are bound and you have rights on each other, you have duties towards each other. So there is always a fallback support system. Whereas here, you're not recognized. Your relationship has no value. It has no recognition. It is, at the end of the day, just non-binding. At the end of the day, it is virtual. It's not real. It has no real standing. And because you actually have no rights onto each other, a boyfriend cannot exert his rights on his girlfriend, to be very honest, and a girl definitely cannot exert her rights on the boyfriend. So whatever this is called playing house, in other words. You're literally playing house without a house. You're not a couple. You are virtually pretending to be a couple, let's put it this way, because you're not. You're not a couple. Legally, you're not a couple. You're pretending to be a couple. You're playing house. And so you're pretending you have rights on each other, you're pretending, but you don't actually. Again, I will say it, you do not have rights on each other. And you cannot force the other person to comply to you. And you cannot be forced to comply to them, because it is your relationship has no value. It has no standing. It's not accepted, it's not recognized in any religion, in any law, in any society. It's not. You understand? It's like two children just playing house. Let's put it this way. There is no value to it. And you cannot complain. That's another thing. We may all get together and say, yeah, no, this is wrong, that is wrong, and this is it may be wrong, because everybody is realizing that, okay, you were supposed to have been having this verbal vows with each other that you're bound together and this and that. But the truth is, again, as I said, actually, no. Because you did not sign any contract to legally bind you to each other. So you have no rights on each other. And so that's when we'll go to the next step as to why gifts given to girlfriends and boyfriends also are not at all accepted in Islam. And if a girl thinks that, oh, you know what, so what if he spends money on me? No, what do you mean, so what? This is haram. This is out and out haram. As friends, if you're just friends and you exchange gifts, that is something else. But here you're not friends. Here you are claiming to be more than friends. First of all, this claim in itself comes under the transgression category of Islam. It comes under the haram category of Islam, because Islam does not recognize this relationship. As I said, no law recognizes this relationship. No religion recognizes this relationship. It has no recognition. It has no value. It has no standing. So you think that, oh, because he's my boyfriend, I have the right to ask from him. You don't. You're not his wife, you see. That's the point. You have to be somebody's spouse to exert such rights. So such gifts that boyfriends and girlfriends exchange, when it comes to, especially nowadays, that's what I'm saying. Now I'm coming to nowadays. Look, in our times, we had a little more caution. We didn't go around selling stuff from our homes, or selling stuff that our parents gave us and giving that amount of money, or buying lavish gifts like mobiles and phones for our boyfriends and girlfriends. There were a few idiots who used to, and we literally used to call them idiots. Yes, there were a few like that. We literally used to call them morons and idiots, because again, everybody had the common sense to know that at the end of the day, this is not something that can last forever. You don't know where it's going. You don't know. Today you're together, tomorrow you're not. Today you're stuck to the hip. Tomorrow you wouldn't even want to see each other's faces. Things happen, life happens. Everybody had the common sense. Little token gifts were good enough. Exchange of little small gifts were good enough. People who wanted to flaunt their riches, they were the ones who went for such stupid things. But the problem is now everybody wants to flaunt their riches, even if they don't have those riches. Now, that is again where we come back to the one of the biggest problems in our society, in a society like ours, where you have on one side the rich, and on the other side you have the poor, and then you have the desperate, and then you have the struggling, and you have all of these. Problem is that even if you're not that poor, and where before you could have enjoyed your life without any of these thoughts in mind, but social media, and especially our content creators, they have played a role, and the Indian media played a huge role in the subcontinent in ruining lives, is what I'll say, by making people think that you can get rich quick, that you can get rich overnight. Crime rates increased because of this kind of thinking, and now it's become a global phenomenon, obviously, where social media all over the world is now portraying such unrealistic images of people, and real people. Now, as I said, that's the difference again between people like ours and in the Western society, where people have a little more self-awareness, where they slam such content creators, saying that this is not even real life. What are you doing? Who are you? But because the reason why they're slamming them, and the reason why we're slamming them, is because we're looking at the new generation. The problem is the new generation, Gen Z. Gen Z is so unrealistic. They're living in virtual worlds. They're living in virtual reality. They have no clue as to what real life is all about. They want to run away from their everyday struggles. They think that, we need to have this kind of a life. This kind of a life does not come overnight. Never did, never will. It takes decades to make a house. It takes decades to make a house a home. It takes decades to make your life sustainable. Everybody is always struggling. You don't see their struggles, but everybody is always struggling. Even those who are rich are constantly struggling to maintain their riches. Why? Because money loses value fast. Currency value gets lost very quickly. The day your government decides to mint more money in the press, you're gone. You're gone. The value of your money is completely gone. So, yeah. The problem is that the generation that we're dealing with now, they need a reality check. In fact, they need a reality smack. And the problem that this generation is, the worst part is that they literally think that, we should, we should steal from our homes, or we should sell what expensive gifts our family has given us, and we should, buy expensive gifts and give it to our girlfriends. And, for boys, I think this is a very wrong attitude, to be honest. And even girls who come across such boys who expect them to spend money on them or to spend lavishly on them, those girls need to back off. Okay, those boys need to back off who are expected to lavishly gift things to their girlfriends, and those girls need to back off who are expected to spend a lot of money on boys. Why even? Again, as I said, your relationship is not real. It has no standing. It's not binding. It has no legal standing. It has no religious standing. Nobody and no system in the world recognizes or accepts that relationship. You understand? Because it's not real. It's really not real. It's something that you people concocted on your own, and tomorrow you will be out of it, and the day after tomorrow you will be with somebody else. Right? So, in Islam, that is why dating and having such relationships is haram, because you go towards transgressions. The lines get blurred between what is right and what is wrong. People start committing acts of crime even for each other. This is an act of crime when you're stealing something from your house and giving it to them. It is also an act of crime when you're selling something that has been gifted to you or given to you by your family, and then you're giving your girlfriend a mobile, or you're giving her a monthly of, for example, 10,000 rupees or 20,000 rupees. Why? She's not your wife. Why are you giving her a monthly income of 10,000 rupees? And obviously the boy is doing that because he wants to flex, and it is a completely wrong kind of flex. But the girl is also to blame 100%, because on the one side, if she says that, oh yeah, no, I think about Islam, or I'm looking, or I'm, I try to be a little, I believe in God and this and that, and then you go and you take that money that is given to you by somebody who doesn't even have a committed relationship with you. On what grounds? It is haram. It is totally haram. Every single penny that you have taken from your boyfriend is haram. And every single penny that you have taken from your girlfriend is haram. As I said, when you exchange little tokens of gifts, that is something else. That still comes under the halal category, because you are giving something small and it's within your means, and you're not going through loops to do it. These are the kind of gifts that you would even gift your friends. Right? When you gift friends, that is something else. But when you're gifting your girlfriend or boyfriend, that comes under the same category of gifting your spouses or gifting your families. Okay? That these are strictly under those categories, which is why it becomes haram. Because now you have expectations from each other that a spouse is supposed to have. You see, you have spousal expectations from each other, which means that you will have physical spousal expectations from each other soon. Then you can transgress. And so Islam puts a full stop to anything that can lead to transgressions, from small to big. And so at the end of the day, tell me one thing. If you have transgressed in a non-committal relationship or a non-committed relationship, and tomorrow you break off and go your own ways, imagine the damage that has been done to you, psychologically, physically, socially, morally. Just imagine that damage. Why would Islam want you? Why would God want you to go through that damage that is totally unnecessary, built of a totally unnatural relationship, an unnatural situation? This was an unnatural damage that you didn't really have to go through, and you deliberately went out of your way to put yourself into that harm's way. Believe me, the psychological and physical damage of coming out of messy, non-committal relationships is even greater, because you get scarred for life. And the scar is greater because this was not a relationship that even had any commitment. It had no legal standing. It was nothing. And it caused you so much pain. I thought the whole point of not getting married was to stop yourself from getting through that pain. But you're going through that pain again and again and again. So then you rather just get married and go through that pain once. At least it will stop you from going into these things for life. So in Islam, having an illicit relationship of any kind, a non-marital relationship, is haram. And anything that goes in between, within that relationship, becomes haram, including the exchange of gifts, because as I said, you're not exchanging gifts anymore. It's either the girl who's taking or it's either the guy who's taking. You're not even exchanging gifts, number one. And the girl is taking it as if it's her right. It's not. Again, if you're a Muslim, you would know that every penny that you just took from that boy throughout your years of relationship was haram. Especially if you even used that money to help your family, for example. Then that is totally, totally haram, because what you just did is again something that is expected from a legally binding relationship. And that is why then people look down on such girls who come from struggling families and who go into these colleges and schools that in which you see those who are financially stable. You see them send their children to those schools and colleges, and then when they send their daughters and sons to these colleges and all, it's with the intention that they should attract, lure and trap somebody from a financially sound family, which again nobody would care and nobody would mind if These kind of things don't come in between, where you're finding out that the whole point is for them to take from the boy and his family and feed your own family. Because again, in Islam, that is also haram. It is haram to support your family while taking from your in-laws. You have no right on your in-laws or their money or their property. Your right is towards your husband, and your right is towards your own parents, and your husband's right is towards you and towards his own parents. You have no rights on his families and on anything to do with his family, and he has no rights on your family or anything to do with your family, even though you have a legally binding relationship as a married couple. So when there are boundaries set even for married couples in Islam and in the law, why would you think that there would not be any boundaries for a relationship that has no standing whatsoever, that is not even recognized by any system whatsoever? So yes, please, if you really think that you are really, people who believe in God, then you need to understand that this life is not permanent. This life is temporary. Whatever we're doing in this life is a test. Every single thing that we come across in our life is a test. Every single thing. What somebody's giving you, what somebody's taking from you, what somebody's saying to you, what somebody's doing to you, what you're doing to somebody, what you're saying to somebody, what's coming as part of your life, every little thing is a test. And we have to remind ourselves and we have to stay alert. Because these are those, surprise quizzes that we're getting in life. We were never allowed to prepare. We could never prepare. We never prepared, and we can never prepare. So the only thing we can do with surprise quizzes is stay focused, stay vigilant, and, do our best. And the best way to do that is to constantly be on the alert by understanding, oh, this is also a test. This is also a test. This is also a test. I have to come through this. I have to come through this. I have to come through this. And to everything you have to apply the Islamic law if you're a Muslim, or if you're not even a Muslim, apply whatever values and principles that you have in your religion or in your system or in your legal system, and see that, okay, what is it that I'm doing? How does it help me in the long run? How does it help me, after my death, for example? How does it help me within this life as well? What am I getting out of it? And, what is it? What is it supposed? So, for example, if somebody is giving you something, first of all, again, you're not even supposed to enter a non-committal relationship. It is forbidden in Islam, again, for these reasons. Because you end up exerting or forcing each other to observe rights and duties towards each other, which you actually don't owe each other, which you're not obliged to. You actually do not have any rights on each other, and you have no duties towards each other, because, again, it's not binding. It has no recognition. So boyfriends and girlfriends, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but I'm sorry, all these rights and all these duties that you're forcing onto each other and exerting to each other and they don't apply. Because at the end of the day, you really don't have any rights on each other, because you don't have a committed relationship. It's not a legally binding relationship. It's not a religiously binding relationship. So you cannot apply spousal values to a non-committal relationship. So yeah, I'm sorry to burst your bubble here, but yes, having relationships is haram, because it leads to acts of haram. Okay, it leads to such acts which are not even accepted in any society where even Islam doesn't exist. Believe me, this is no society with any moral values would accept these. No matter how open or liberal a society gets, when it comes down to brass tacks, nobody actually accepts any of these things. Nobody. Because our minds psychologically do not accept these things. Because no matter how much we try to make these things natural and normal, our minds are wired in such a way that it does not accept, our mind itself does not accept these things as natural. We are not psychologically wired this way. We may think we are, we may try to go and push through all that and make any excuses and justifications, but the truth is we come out scarred every single time. We come out in pain every single time, because the pain and the scar is worse because our mind within its deep consciousness and unconsciousness and subconsciousness knows that this was all unnatural, this was all unreal. So please get your priorities straight, especially nowadays, what with the financial and social conditions and all, with the way the world is going. You guys, you need to get your priorities straight, okay? Especially boys. Because boys seem to think that they are invincible and, they are kings of the world and they don't owe it. Yeah, I'm sorry. No. You are supposed to learn how to be disciplined and responsible. You need to get your priorities right. And when it comes to, again, I'm sorry, but when it comes to girls from struggling classes, whether we like it or not, whether we like to admit it or not, but it is a fact that girls and boys from struggling classes, they have their own priorities. Their priorities is how to get out of this situation. So their desperation level is higher. So while you're so casually flicking through your lives, they are in desperate mode. And they will do anything and everything to get themselves out of that situation. And as we know, desperate times lead to desperate acts, okay? So when they're desperate, they will do desperate things. Even if it means luring and trapping rich girls from rich families, or luring and trapping rich boys from rich families. You may not be rich in your own right, but from where they're standing, you're pretty damn rich. And relationships that are created for, out of such reasons, I'm sorry to say, but they are unhealthy relationships. You both have different priorities in life. Their priority is to use you and milk you to get what they want, to support themselves and to support their families. That's their priority. Your priority is that you need to just skip through life, and you're doing whatever you're doing, and you will go into your own socializing, and you will go into your own whatever it is that you're doing, and you're thinking that, oh yeah, I have to fulfill her needs. That also becomes your priorities. And actually you both are getting it all wrong, because this is an unhealthy relationship. Because marriage is a committed relationship. Now you're committed to each other. So if the man is supposed to be committed to his wife, and now he has to change his ambitions accordingly, the woman also must change her ambitions accordingly. Her priority is her husband, not her family anymore. You understand? Her priority is not to leech off of her husband and feed her family. It's haram. Again, that is also haram, right? Her priority is making her own life with her husband. Her husband's priority is making his own life with her. Yes, she has certain duties towards her parents, but that is between her and her parents. And he has duties towards his parents. That is between him and his parents. Like how in Islam, she's not obliged to cater to his family's needs. He is not obliged to cater to her family's needs. They are only obliged to cater to each other's needs. They have to take care of each other's needs, and they have to take care of their own family's needs within their own capacity without disturbing the other. That's how it works. But that is actually one of the biggest problems that Pakistan is facing right now, is when boys or girls from the lower financial strata of the society, when they get married to boys and girls from the richer or the better off part of the society, then these kind of financial clashes begin. Why? Because, as I said, your mentality, the way you think, that depends heavily on your environment, where you grew up, where you were born, how you lived your life. And I keep on giving the example of Nawaz Sharif and family as well, that look, they came from the lowest of the low. They were very, very poor, and they were basically blacksmiths. And despite the fact that now they have made trillions and trillions and gazillions of dollars, Their mentality hasn't changed. As you can see, they're still the same. They still think the same. They still act the same. They still act like those people who come from really struggling classes, and they come and they waste money here and there, and they steal from other people, and they take from other people, and then they keep on putting it into their pockets and into their accounts. And because the fear, as I've said before once when I talked in great detail about the psychology of such people, the fear of going back to that desperate life of poverty, that is what gnaws at them. That fear is always ever present, and that is what does not allow them to relax and change. They will forever be like that. They will constantly be in fear of poverty, even though they have earned gazillions and stolen from people, and they keep on stealing from people, and they're still stealing from people, and they're just pocketing all that money. Why? Because their greed will never end. Their greed for money will never end. Why? Because that desperation is still there. And Nawaz Sharif also basically married into a rich family. His wife Kulsum, she came from a well-off family, from a very educated, very well-off family. And so you will see that is why she was such a refined lady, and he's such a coarse man. And imagine the patience of that lady, that she had to live her life with such a man. And imagine her bitterness and her misery, seeing her children also becoming like her husband. There's nothing refined about them, obviously, because they will be like their father. I mean, that's their blood. So imagine that this family has earned billions and gazillions. They married into rich families, everything, but they are still hungry for money. They're still greedy. They still live as if they're about to die if they don't get that money that they want right now. They are still living in fear and desperation. That desperation, that will never leave them. And this is a psychological fact. When you come from a struggling family and you've seen desperate times, no matter how well off you become later on in life, you will constantly look over your shoulder, because you have been wired that way now. Your brain's been wired that way, that you will constantly look over your shoulder, and your greed will never end. Your desperation will never end. Your fear will never end. And this is one of the biggest reasons why marriages are breaking down in our society. Is because girls want to get rich overnight, and they think we should just get married to a rich guy, take everything he has, and then leave. And boys are also doing the same thing. They're getting married to rich girls, and they're thinking, oh, how can we steal all their property? How can we steal everything and leave? And people are not stupid anymore. So people are now protecting their properties and protecting their families more and more. And that is also what is leading to divorce rates. Because when these people who have desperately gotten married, when they realize that, oh, we're not able to get our hands on what we want, and we're wasting our time, then they leave immediately, which is good riddance to bad rubbish, really. But the hurt and the destruction that they leave in their wake, the psychological destruction, the financial destruction, the social and moral hurt and destruction that they leave, the damage that they leave in their wake, this is getting worse day by day. So you need to reset your priorities. Stop running after non-committal relationships. Focus on your studies. Focus on your ambitions. Have ambitions, please. Have ambitions, whatever they are. I don't care. Have ambitions that can let you to focus on yourself. Have ambitions about how to better your lives. Think about traveling, think about making something, think about creating something, think about starting a job, think about starting a business. Again, not with your parents' money. Think about how you can start a business without any money, because nowadays that there are so many ways to start a business as long as you have a mobile. Stop looking at others that, oh, somebody should give me a laptop, somebody should give me a mobile, somebody should give me money, somebody should give me this. If that is how easy life was supposed to be, then we wouldn't all be struggling. That is your test. Your test in life is, how can you do something on your own? That is your biggest test in life. That is what God has basically thrown us here to see how can we do what we can do on our own and how much. Set your priorities, please, everybody, girls and boys. Stop entering into this facade of get rich quick schemes, because there is no such thing. There is no such thing as a free lunch, and there's no such thing as getting rich overnight. These are both starting points of haram khori. Believe it or not, this is literally where you begin to go off track and enter into the haram category. Just like how, as I said, when you start a non-committal relationship, that is the starting point of you going off track and into the haram category, because that is when you will commit adultery. That is when you will commit financial sins and crimes. That is when you will commit moral crimes. That is when you will commit religious crimes, and that is when you will commit psychological crimes, because you will be psychologically hurting each other because it's artificial, you see. Again, this whole relationship in itself is artificial. It's not real. So the rights that you exert on each other are artificial. They have no value. And so when you're not spouses, you're not married. So when you start going down that path, that is when you go closer and closer towards the haram path. So I'm sorry, but I don't care how you justify it. But a gift taken, especially such gifts, again, which I said, if you're taking a mobile from your boyfriend or girlfriend, if you're taking a car or a bike from your boyfriend or girlfriend, if you're taking money every month from your boyfriend or girlfriend, then this is haram. It is 100% haram. And the only way you can get away with it, if you want to atone for it, is return every penny. And if you cannot return every penny, then have the decency to at least stop asking for more, or to stop them now from giving more. Because this is all haram. You have entered the haram realm, is all I'm saying. So you need to define your boundaries in life. You need to set up certain principles in life and priorities in life, and you need to go by them. And stop allowing yourselves to get deviated into such things. These things are nothing more than psychological and financial traps. They distract you from your real path in life. They distract you from what you really should be doing with your life. Instead of entering into these things, if you focused on your life, if you focused on your jobs, if you focused on your careers, you would be making money anyway now. You would be making money, and you would be creating things in life, and you would be living and leading a very accomplished life. So yeah, I'm sorry, but I don't care what you people say or do, but this is a fact, and it is a fact because it is written in black and white, and it is common sense as well, because it is psychologically acknowledged as well. Okay, these relationships are not normal. These are not natural. And that is why you come out scathed from these relationships. And I'm sorry, but girls and guys who cling to each other, when you are trying to break off of that relationship, there is something very wrong with you. You need to exert a little bit of self-respect and dignity and back off. Because on one side you're saying, we believe in God and we think that if something is for us, it will come to us. Then why are you clinging? Back off. If it's yours, back off. Focus on your lives. Use that time. Use that breakup time to focus on your lives. Reset your priorities. And if you're still made for each other, yes, then God will ultimately put you together. If you actually believe in that, then why are you clinging to each other? Well, anyway, this is my 2 cents at the point. And I would love to go into great detail about it, but the thing is that I'm just trying to I was trying to focus on especially these 2 to 3 things pertaining to modern life, romantic relationships, aka destruction, psychological destruction, and lack of priorities and common sense. Yeah. Please bring back common sense, if anything else. This is me signing out. Khuda Hafiz.